Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work, and this economic update is prepared for our Patreon community. I want to talk briefly about Brexit, one of the major items in the news the last few days, as Britain leaves the European Union. It's a kind of strange historical rise and fall story, not so different from the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and indeed these days the turn beyond the peak of the American Empire too. Let's take a look at Brexit. The real culprit in Brexit is British capitalism. That's what in the end destroyed the British Empire, just as a century or two earlier it had helped to create the British Empire. Britain is an example of rising with, but also falling with, capitalism. The Great Depression of the 1930s showed the world that the British Empire was over. The new dominant players in global capitalism then were the United States, Germany, and Japan. The great number two crash of capitalism in 2008 and 9 put the finishing touches on the decline of the British Empire by setting in motion what ended this last week in Brexit, the departure of England and Britain from the European Union, although we shall see what parts of Britain and the United Kingdom may, after all, stay with the European Union. The crash of 2008 and 9 hammered the British working class, hurting it more than in many other countries, with declining standards of living, with a society always threatened by yet the next downturn, with a society driven by its capitalist economic system to extraordinary inequality and all the social tensions and bitternesses that such inequality always generates. It was clear that the British working class was becoming more and more interested in getting beyond capitalism. Turns out, whatever you may like about capitalism when you're on its way up, you do not like it when it is on its way down, as it has been in Britain for over a century, all the denial notwithstanding. So something had to happen to save British capitalism now that the mass of people, first in the Great Depression, now in the second biggest collapse in 2008 and 9, now that the British working class was more and more clear that this system didn't work for them. You needed a big distraction, and the British ruling classes knew where to turn, where classes in such trouble have already turned in other countries, to nationalism, to blaming foreigners for the problem, to looking outside rather than inside, at foreign economic and political forces and players, but never, of course, oh no, never, of course, at your own capitalist system and its dysfunction. And so the politicians arrived, as they always do, to ride the nationalist bandwagon up to the top of the heap politically, playing the right noise at the right time, telling the British people what they desperately wanted to hear, that it wasn't a big change at home that was needed. It wasn't the horribly scary prospect of a new economic system, that Britain wouldn't have to go now through what it went through in the transitions from feudalism to capitalism, from Cromwell to the empire. No, they hoped for a quicker and easier fix. turn against the foreigners, the Polish workers, the European Union's rules, anything to get you off of turning inward to face the system that had dragged you down, capitalism. And so we had the drama of Brexit. And now that Brexit is a reality, now that the British have cut off the foreigner they needed to blame for the problems of their own capitalism, they are left with the unresolved problems, dysfunction, instability, and inequality of British capitalism, with no more foreigners to blame. It's going to be a very difficult time. Evading and denying your basic economic problem never has and will not now solve it.